Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hillary Sepulveda Brown here, founder of Radical Recovery of Self, licensed spiritual practitioner, master spiritual psychology coach, and lover of all things in regards to remembering the divinity within. I am here with one of my dearest friends and soul sisters, who I would love to introduce. This is Katy Ramirez, who is a new thought spiritual practitioner, multi-talented artist, performer, radical recovery of self coach. She is a 3-time best-selling author. Yes, you heard that correct. And an artist that strives to break world records as she is amazing the masses and changing the world as she goes. Welcome, Katy.
Thank you so much, Hillary. I just adore you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's just such an honor. And, this podcast really came about. Katy is someone who has been on my want list for a long time in dreaming about this podcast. But truly, it came about through a conversation between sisters and a conversation that we had last week in regards to, is God in the room? And as we were talking, I thought, wait, let's wait and have a podcast around this conversation. And I just say, let's get started. So I like to start with one question, Katy. So if you could tell us, what have you radically reclaimed within your life that you once thought to be an untouchable or immovable feat?
I'm so glad that we didn't practice this and you didn't send me any questions before this so that I could answer this honestly and truthfully. So I think the biggest thing that I have reclaimed on my journey, which has been a true journey, and it's something that I work on every single day, is becoming my own best friend. And what that means and what that looks like is setting aside that time for myself, making myself good. The biggest one was, believe it or not, making myself good, nourishing meals. One of the things that I used to do, I would only make good, nourishing meals for loved ones or other people around me, or I would just eat. I can't say that I'm a perfect person and that I give myself big meals, because I don't want that all the time. Sometimes I just want a piece of fruit and I'm on the go, and my what I want to nourish my body changes on a regular basis, especially with heat and influxes and stuff and changing locations. But it's feeding myself good food, no pun intended, for my book called Feed Your Head. However, feeding myself good food for myself, and not needing to do it because I'm with someone or it's for my family. I went through a big bout of depression living in New York City during the COVID era. And I wasn't feeding myself properly. And I was going on walks, and I was filling my head with, I was reading the Bhagavad Gita for the first time. I was, doing really high conscious work, but I wasn't fueling my nervous system and my system. And so that was probably the biggest thing that I've kind of overcome, aside from then how I communicate with myself, and also learning how to utilize my voice and speak up when I'm uncomfortable or when things don't feel right within, or if someone's really crossed a boundary with me, I speak up today. And that was just not something I did because I was so afraid that you wouldn't like me anymore if I told you hey, that behavior made me uncomfortable, Oh,
I love this, Katy. Yes, I do know. As I too, as a mom of many, I would my son was reminding me the other day that I didn't eat, and I would cook for everyone, but then I would sit down and I wouldn't eat. And there was something around that, right? We do it for everyone else, but what are we doing for ourselves? And so I love how you reclaim that nourishment, not only of feeding your head, and it's one of my favorite books that you've written, of nourishing our minds and our souls, but also this physical body that we have. And I find that such an important thing, because I think it often gets set to the side in that, and bringing that into the conversation around, is God in the room? And for those of you that the word God triggers you, believe me, I was there once. I was also that person. I was a Christian missionary for many years, and there was a time in my life that when people would use the word God, I had a particular image in my mind. And bringing that to the conversation around nourishing ourselves, we have to ask ourselves, is God in the room with us when we're nourishing ourselves? Do you have a gift, right? Much like you were saying, if you were feeding someone else, if someone else was there as a house guest or a dinner guest, you would go all out. But when it was just you, it was different. And I think that when we remember that God is in the room, and whether you're talking about a God for you, for our listeners, of someone that is a man in the sky, or Yeshua, or Buddha, or Allah, whomever that is for you, or whether you're a new thought practitioner and you believe that God resides within you, the truth is God is in the room. And if we remember that, we're never alone. We always have a dinner guest, right? And so we can take that time.
Truly, we always have a dinner guest. And one of the biggest ahas, aside from connecting with the God source within me, because that same source that is beating, like, it doesn't have to be this like outside big thing. The J word and the G word, used to make me go insane, and so, like, literally I would just go crazy. And so when I started inviting that source in, and I was like, oh my God, my heart is beating, and my lungs are functioning, and my organs are working. And I have this ability to, smell. I have this ability to feel love. That was when it was like, oh, it's in me. Like, this is in me at all times. And then I see it when I look at, babies, when I look at puppies, when I look at, it's not all rainbows and butterflies, but when I really started like seeing, that, like, it is in the details. I've literally cried, and I've had this conversation with you, cried seeing multiple butterflies one after the next, because the chances of seeing baby butterflies, and like 9 of them, it's like so minimal, but like it's in the details, right? And, is God in the room? If I am seeking to find God, I am divided from God, period. If I'm looking for God, if I'm looking to connect to a source greater than me, but still beats my heart, I'm disconnected.
Yeah, I love that you say that, Katy, because that's the truth, right? And in our spiritual world, as spiritual practitioners and people who are on that search, I think that that's something that's often misconstrued, is that we have to find something. And truly, rather than finding, for me, it's always been about remembering. And that's something that you have spoken quite a bit about. When we are divided and we are detached, we have to find something that is outside of us. Whereas if we remember that God, Yeshua, Buddha, Allah, that divine spirit is within us, we remember, right? We understand we are never truly disconnected. We have just forgotten. And I love the phrase remembering, because, and you and I have spoken about this, on a lot of conversations previously, but I always think about my fingers and my toes, and I think about dismemberment. If you lose your big toe, you have a really hard time balancing. And both Katy and I teach yoga. And if you were going to do tree pose on your left foot, and you have dismembered your big toe on your left foot, it's not impossible, but it's a balancing act, right? And I feel that remembering that God is in the room, especially in those most challenging of times, is literally reattaching that big toe, reattaching that member that helps us to live that balanced, aligned lifestyle.
And with that, what comes to mind is when I am imbalanced, when I am in emotion, we've gone through, like, polarity is a huge thing that we touch on in the spiritual world, but out in the regular world, we don't, when things are quote, quote, bad, or when they're difficult, or when they're challenged, or when they're painful, we couldn't see, like, we wouldn't know a shiny day, or if it, like, if we didn't have the rain, right? Like, we wouldn't know a sunny day. And for anyone who is listening to this and has a hard time with God, I invite you to think of the universe. Like I invite you to think of the sea, the ocean that is full of fish and full of creatures and beings. Because truly, universal power is what is keeping those trees alive right now, and to just get there and invite that universal source in. And we could not know what a balanced state feels like, or get towards balance, or work towards balance without an imbalance, without an influx, without the heartbreak and the heartache that is a blessing. Because if I'm not feeling it, if I'm not living it, if I'm not going and growing, then I'm stuck, I'm stagnant, or I'm not here anymore. Right?
Oh, yes, absolutely. 100%, Katy. And, let's talk about that, because one of the things that I love about you and our conversations that we have on a personal level is that we don't beat around the bush. Katy and I are as real as you fucking get. I mean, we have good days and we have bad days. And as Katy was just saying about the law of polarity, it truly is in that recognition that you can't understand and have the joy of harmony unless you've experienced that disruption of chaos. And Katy, tell me, when you are, I don't know what the most chaotic moment in your life is, or if that's something that you'd want to share, but in that moment, is there a specific method or way that you bring yourself back to remembering that the universe is you, and when I asked that, I thought about your analogy about trees, because, one of the great things and scientific things that we found out recently, and I use that word lightly, is that the trees are connected around the globe. The root systems of trees, of forests, are all one. Mm-hmm. And in that oneness, right, there is divinity. There is that universal being of God in the room. So is there a certain way that you remember, let's say, I know for me as a mom, there's been so many times I've lost my temper as a mom, and I have forgiven myself, so I don't carry that shame around anymore. But it's in that moment of that heightened emotion. What is it that brings you back to that remembering of your divinity within?
I used to isolate a lot when I would be upset. And I can't say that I'm cured from that. Isolation, for me, was almost a tool. And I realized that I don't have to do anything alone anymore. So I think having a network of people in multiple areas, making sure that I'm not alone, because I want to revert inward. And I think it's important to get with yourself and to get into whatever feels good and right, whether it's a prayer, whether it's putting on a song, dancing, trying to laugh. I think the biggest thing is sometimes I do need to get in bed and I need to lay down and I need to go to sleep. But I do know when I put myself in a sleep state, it compounds my depression even more. And so sometimes I need to get on the phone, or I need to get to, whether it's 12-step recovery or something else, like I need to not be alone when I'm reverting into, I'm doing, it's, whether it's a command that's coming up that's saying like, I'm not enough, I'm not worthy of more. I need to get surrounded, not just surround myself with the presence of God, universal source, but I actually need to get around other people so I can get out of my own head, so that I can actually feel connected, because I'm not on this planet alone. We're all here, and everybody from the gas station attendant, to the grocery store, everybody's doing their best. Even on our worst, hardest days, we're all always doing our best. Always, every second, even when we're in pain. So when I revert inward, I have learned slowly and the hard way that I need to get connected to other people other than just source, because God is in people. God is in you. It's in your eyes. It's in my eyes. It's in the puppies. It's in the babies. It's in the eyes of a grandparent who's no longer living. It's here, every place.
I totally get that. And that resonates for me. One of the ways that I find source and reprieve from those infinite thoughts, as you were talking about the commands, and sometimes when we're alone, we can just infinitely keep reworking the thoughts of what we thought happened or what we think is going to happen. And it can just become this perpetual compounding of that negative being or state of being. And the ocean has been something that has always been soothing for me. And I often get asked why I always live by the ocean. And I haven't always lived by the ocean. I lived in the mountains for a long time and had my first 3 children there, but I was always driving to the ocean. And so for me, that is such a source. And one of the things that I've come to find out within my own life is similar to you. And that's why I use that analogy of the root system of the tree is community. I found out how important it was to not let my thoughts slip into that infinite spin out, I like to call it, and being around others and seeing God in them, both in their own version, right, of spirituality and in whatever version they were living in the moment, without the judgment, but seeing that reflection and understanding. And that's just been such a great source and resource for me of being your soul sister over the last few years, of having that true reflection. So I would love to hear a bit about that journey for you of, when you said you radically reclaimed that being your best friend and what that journey looked like for you, if you'd be open to sharing that.
It's been a lot of listening. I think we get a lot of SOSs throughout our lives when it's time for us to redirect. And it shows up differently, but it's a voice that says there's a different way. There's a different way, being in relationships that aren't healthy, whether you're in a relationship with yourself in some capacity. Sometimes it's food related, sometimes it's drug related, sometimes it's people related, sometimes it's acceptance, thinking that we deserve something. And so we just, take it, if you will, and for me, it's been a lot of asking and then listening. And once I got that kind of understood about, letting go, I've been on this journey of letting go of different things over the past, I don't know, about 10 years or so. And when I say different things, that's embodied in, recovering from body dysmorphia, recovering from addictions like drug and alcohol, recovering relationships, letting go, getting myself out of situations work related that weren't just like I had outgrown. Right. And then I started really listening and, and other people were shown to me, they were like, you deserve to feed yourself, and being called out and saying like, you deserve to be your own best friend was a big call out for me. And then listening. And one of the big things for me was, relocating myself to a place where I'm, 10 minutes from nature, that when I finish up my day, I can load up my dog in the car and we get to nature. And that's where I go and I get recentered. And it's just one of those things. It's a listening to what my soul wants. And so so I don't know. I don't know if I answered that question correctly, but it's like, I just keep listening and then moving forward. And yes, there are many days that I question, was this right? Was this right? But like, I know that God has me exactly where I'm supposed to be. And the moment I doubt it, and, we have fears of recovering, like just because you do the work does not mean you're not going to feel the wrath of what you did, of your actions. Right. Like, but it's baby stepping. And then we remember putting ourselves back together slowly, but slowly putting my heart back into my chest. And then instead of putting that glass shell casing around it, maybe it's a cloth, right, that I put over it, and it's available. My heart is now available to the animals and to the beings. And then maybe it's available to the people, right? Like, and knowing that like I can fall out and then I can fall back in, right? At all times.
Yes, Katie, I love that take on vulnerability. I think that's one of the biggest things that we do recover when we reclaim and remember our divine selves, and that connection to remembering God is in the room, is that, right? And it's remembering that we get to be vulnerable to receive and to give. And that can be such a challenge for so many who have forgotten, right? That they are connected and that God is there to support them in the room, and like we said before, whatever semantics that you want to use, whether that God is the universe or nature, or Yeshua, Jesus, whatever that is for you, is remembering you are not alone. And you get to be vulnerable. And it doesn't, I love how you said that, it isn't a one and done thing, because life keeps lifing, right? It's not, I recovered as my best friend and then we never had a disagreement again. It's not, it doesn't always work that way. That's part of the practice. And in that practice, I think what I find so beautiful in you is as a performer, understanding performers are performers and entertainers. And I see you change the world as a performer. I see you teach these beliefs and teachings and methods from stage. And if you would just talk a little bit about performing, and I guess my question to you is keeping that best friend of yourself, keeping that relationship as such a priority between you and the God within you, and also performing, which really is an entertainment, right? An outside validation, and what that looks like and how you keep that balance. And just tell us a little bit about your performances, if you would.
Absolutely. Well, what I do is I'm a sword swallower, which is an ancient skill set that was an act done over 2,000 years ago in India to connect with God. So my lineage runs very deep in my bloodline, for where this all comes from. And so when I'm on stage entertaining, it is a co-collaboration. Yes, I'm there and I get dressed up and I have a stage name and I'm fully embodied and I'm fully connected to myself. If I am not in the room with others, if there is not one other person in the room, it's just like me practicing at home, alone. We need each other. Like, we're here to entertain and love each other and get excited with each other. And without other people in the room, it's like I'm there alone. It's just like what I do in my apartment, and so it is a co-collaboration, because just as it would excite you, right? Like, think about when you see music that you love and you just you scream because you're just like, yeah.
I scream when I watch you perform, Katie.
I scream when I eat ice cream. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, but it's all the same because it feels good, right? Like, it feels good and it feels exciting. And and so it is a co-collaboration. And I talk about this a lot on stage, that without you in the room, then we don't have a show, right? And so it's all moving parts necessary. Without the person who is cleaning up the stage afterwards and taking out the garbage, right? We don't have a show. The ticket taker, the internet that you might buy the ticket through, or whatever it might be. There's so many different elements to wherever you're going to see a show. And so it is, coming back to everything that we've been talking about, the rootedness, like every moving part is necessary. The social media that we use freely, on our phone, like everything that we do is for something. And it's it all comes back together and works together. And even when you think you're singled out and when you're doing it alone, and when it's singular in nature, that's a choice. If I choose to operate alone, that is my choice. However, even when you think that you're alone and when you're operating alone, if you're using social media to promote yourself, sorry to break it to you, you're not operating alone. You know what I mean? And so it's like,
Yes.
it's billion, and we've had conversations, and you know this, it has cost people billions of dollars to create these abilities for us to connect, whether it's through, any social media platform, Zoom, all these platforms. Right now, as of this moment in time, I am in Nashville, Tennessee, and you are in Panama, right? Like the fact that we can connect, have this conversation, love each other
in real
and
time,
bring this out in real time, and then bring this out into the world to heal the world is a radical act. It's a radical act of kindness, and it's a radical act of nature. And people poured billions of dollars into this. So we are not singularly operating ever, period.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think you're acting alone, I invite you to come within, because we are never operating alone. And I know this is going off at a tangent for what you asked me on stage, is that I'm never operating alone, period. I'm never up there for myself. It is never just for me, right? It's never just for me.
Fuck yes.
Right.
I love this, Katy.
And I used to think that. I used to be such a dick, and I was like very like I was, and I wouldn't let people take pictures of me. Like I was like really unkind, and I had to like get real with myself, and I was just like, who did I think I was? Like, who really did I think I was then? And I just had to learn that I'm not alone, and that it does matter how I treat other people. And the reality is when I'm operating in that stance, when I am being that unkind to other people, I don't like myself. I am unhappy with myself. If I am ever unkind to someone, I don't like myself. I don't like my circumstances. I don't like what's going on within me, period. I am
right, because it's almost as if you've decided God is not in the room with you in that moment, right? It's being in that individuality. And I'm not saying individuality as a negative thing, but just as you said, it's when we take all the credit and we're thinking that we do it alone, we're really in a denial state, aren't we? And in that denial state, I think that's where so many of us, myself included, and I love how you said you were a dick. I had a conversation with someone and I said, well, I wasn't always a nice person. And they said, what do you mean you? But you're so kind. And I'm like, yeah, well, you didn't know me when I was 20 something, right? And it's such an interesting, ego. And it's such an interesting concept when we think about that. And when you say about freedom of choice and being there and being in that denial and thinking, well, it's all me. Why aren't I getting the credit for it? It's all me. I did it all myself. One of the things that I find in that denial state is that we often enter that loop again of unhappiness, of enjoyment, and we forget the freedom of choice. We have a choice to recognize and remember that we are all together. And when we're in that denial state and that freedom of choice is where we open ourselves, at least for me, where I would open myself up to opinions of others and judgment. And, as a performer, I can only imagine, as a public speaker, I know what it is. It's not necessarily a performance, but you're on stage and you're sharing. And when the audience isn't receptive or doesn't like what you have to say, you have a freedom of choice. You have a choice of understanding the perfection of the moment, and you have a choice to receive that negative or perceived negative reaction in that fucking moment. You get to be like, oh, the audience is a total dick and didn't react or didn't participate, or however that may be. Or you have a choice of understanding the perfection and the reflection of where you were in that moment. And, when you share that about it's not being alone, from, the people who clean to the internet to all of that, I don't see that as a tangent. I see that as truth, to what you were saying. So, just as a follow-up question, where are you now? I know your audience. If you guys haven't seen Katy and her alter ego, Lorraine the Thrill, performing, I highly suggest that you do, because it is literally a thrill to watch. But have you ever had a situation with an audience where you didn't feel that they were receptive or or perceiving you as you wanted them to? And how did you remember that God was in the room? Or maybe you didn't at that time. You know, do you have a story that you'd like to share with us around that?
Mm-hmm. I mean, not everyone's going to like you, period.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
not like the point of, like, I'll remove myself from things that I don't feel all right when like they're starting some sort of negative thing that I don't believe in. I'll just remove myself. But when I've been in places, I mean, for what I do, which is both death defying and shocking talent, skill set, and my alter and Lorraine the Thrill is an extension of me.
Mhm.
There's no separation, and
Yes.
and I lovingly say that. And when if people don't, like, I like to kind of let people know that I exist, period. And because that is what is beautiful to me. Like, what I'm doing is beautiful, and it's taken me many years to understand who I am. And I think it scares people a lot when you know who you are and you just be that. And so, yeah, I love it. I love the shock value and the horror value of people. And I think it's important to keep yourself in environments where you are really cocooned and loved and like totally, accepted for who you are. And how do you do that? You really find communities where you can speak your truth, heal, and surround yourself. And when it doesn't feel right, let it go, really let it go, and
Yes.
really let it go, like really let it go, because not not every stage is for you. Not every stage deserves you, right? Like, and it's just like relationships, like not everybody deserves you,
Mhm.
and
Wisdom drop.
yeah, like, yes, not everyone deserves you. Not every platform deserves you either, and so it's like, I think over the past few years of recovering, more and more, letting go of relationships that did not serve me, people, places, situations that did not serve me, I can go back and look back and be like, and realize like they were never a match anyways. They were never meeting me where I was anyways. Now I strive to be in friendship and like in respectful relationships with everyone. And people like to say business is not personal. Go fuck yourself. Business is so
Thank you.
personal. Like, business is so personal. And if you think that you could ever demean me, demoralize me, or make me feel bad about myself, and that goes for anyone if you think that you can demean, diminish, demand from anyone, go fuck yourself, because it's a you thing. Like, it's a me, like, you know what I'm saying? So like that, and that's like the separation, like behind, like, you don't get to tell anyone what to do ever, period. No matter how much that hurts, no matter
Yeah,
how
you
much.
can, it's so funny because you can try, but the truth is we do have exactly what you said before. We have freedom of choice,
Yeah.
right? And so
Mhm.
we don't, it doesn't work that way. And I
And
love how you're sharing that. I think it's so important.
yeah. Mhm. And then you learn what
Yeah.
doesn't
And
feel
it's,
good isn't good, isn't right, like,
and it's
and
remembering those boundaries, right? And I was sharing the other day with a friend on my travels how I had practiced Ho'oponopono, which is the Hawaiian ritual of forgiveness. Thank you, I love you, I'm sorry, I forgive you, not in that
Mhm.
order. Which is so beautiful. And one of the things I discovered for myself that is beautiful as that is, as an ongoing codependent recovery person, one of the things that did for me was to see people in their true form and love them unconditionally. But I forgot the step of letting go. And one of the things that I had to do for myself was, I'm sorry, thank you, I love you, fuck off. And it's not sending them off into, not wishing ill in any way. It's thank you, I love you, I'm sorry, fuck off. Because I needed in my mind to use a clear distinction of, I have completely, like you said, really let it go, not let it go and then let it back and let it go, because I was treating those boundaries as the tide, and I would let it go out with the tide. And then I'm like, well, maybe they changed and kind come in with the tide. And you've been one of those great reflections for me in those relationships of codependency. But it recently, that's been such a great thing for me, is sending people, I love you, thank you, I'm sorry, fuck off. And it is a clear set boundary in my head. And obviously I'm not saying that to someone when I'm making that, but as I let them go, it's just a clear distinction versus feeling like, oh, I just need to love everybody right where they are and continue to allow them in my life through loving them. And I think that that's a distinction that needs to be made, is that we can love people unconditionally and let them go in a boundary, right? Where we're setting that because we deserve to be in relationships that are aligned and that grow us, and let them go in that love in a clear distinction, that it's a boundary, and it doesn't have to say that it's permanent, but it is a clear distinction of a cut boundary.
And I think that also we get in this like culture of being nice, especially with social medias and all that stuff, where we're like, oh, they totally broke my heart. They hurt my feelings. This thing happened at this place, but I'm going to keep it. I'm going to keep following them. Like, I'm going to keep them in my stuff.
Yes.
And it's one thing to unfollow. And if you need it, like, block and delete, it doesn't mean that you don't love the person, or like you respect the memory of what was, it's just that like, sometimes we're not ready to process the pain. Like, sometimes we can't go there. We can't have this thing where we have self-mutilated in some capacity, energetically self-mutilated, or have received that mutilation. And I don't mean to be too grotesque if anyone has gone through,
I love it.
Massive abuse, but like the biggest thing for me has been patterns of abuse. How do I recover from my own patterns of abuse? And like, I recently had to do that with someone that I loved, because it hurt too much. Like, and I couldn't control. It's like I had to cut it completely out of my system. Like, even a little bit is too much of a person, right? Like, it's like a drug. Like, if you have an addiction to, or if you have an allergy to, I don't know, whatever, anything, right? Penicillin, a little bit is going to mess you up, right? Like, let's be clinical about this, right? A little bit of cancer is still cancer, right?
Cancer.
A little bit of disease is still disease, right? And like, healing takes time, right? So if we have just mentally, emotionally, physically, possibly, if it's, that type of abuse situation, we do things that we don't necessarily like. Love is a powerful drug, emotion, artistic, like art, all of it. So it's so powerful, right? And we might act out in certain ways that really harm us after the fact, right? And so we're completely removing it, completely. And then what happens when you go and you have you've had a surgical procedure to get a cancerous cell cut out of your body, if you choose to do that, then you have treatment afterwards. There is treatment.
Yes.
There is treatment.
Give yourself time to heal.
It is time to heal. And so I could talk about this stuff forever. And like, the reality is like, when I am disconnected, whenever I am making someone wrong, making something wrong, making some situation, whether it's my belly or my bank account or my relationship or my partner, I do not have children, right? But like, I witness people with their children, right? And making their kids wrong, making the spouse wrong, right? When something is wrong with me and I am seeking validation from something else or someone else, I am disconnected from my God source energy, universal source energy, whatever you want to call it, right? Like, I am. No one else can get me there. No one else can brush my teeth for me, right? No one else can give me water. What happens when you don't have water? I learned this the hard way the other day. What happens when you don't have water? You fucking choke. Like, you need it. I need God. I need universal source. I need it. And no one can give it to me. Right. And what happens when you don't brush?
That's the key. That's the key that you just said. No one can give it to you. Right. And I think that that's one of the biggest things is people are myself included, right? I would look outside, and when you said that about like truly letting it go and cutting off, whether that's blocking or whatever it is that you need to do, as that former codependent, one of the things that I used to think was a pride point was every relationship, romantic relationship I was in, I would say, well, I'm still friends with everyone, regardless of how I was treated or how it ended. And I would say that as if it was like a feather in my hat. Whereas now I can see that that was just striving for that validation outside of myself, which is that disconnection, like you said, and no one could teach me that. It was something I had to find within to reconnect to that God source. And, I have a friend I had a conversation with recently about leaking, and we leak. And when we're connected to our God source and we start doing that, and like you said, and, or as I was sharing, and I would want to be friends or, for that outside validation or whatever that was, or I thought I needed, like you said, to be nice because society teaches us we need to stay friends. And, without understanding it was within me, I would leak. It was like poking little holes in the pipe of my source. And so I was leaking that energy out other places while I was searching for something outside of myself, and I love that. I love everything that you said, Katy. I mean, I just think it's so fucking important to understand that you can release people with love. It doesn't mean you have to continue to have them within your life. And that includes, like you said, whether it's that voice or command in your head about your belly or about your bank account or about what you're eating. And I remember a conversation you and I had about, about eating, about plating our food and reminding us that we're deserving of eating our food on beautiful China,
China.
Yeah, exactly. On beautiful China, and if you want to stand up and eat a to-go meal, you can do that too. As long as you're understanding you are worthy, for you are the divine source from within and never separate.
Powerful.
You're powerful. I just enjoy this conversation with you so much. And is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience? I know we're not quite done with our call right now on this podcast, but is there anything, any message, Katy, in your book, Feed Your Head, which Katy has this amazing book that you can get on Amazon. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about it, the synopsis, but it's one of my favorite books. It's an easy read, but it is a profound read. And really, we talk about, as yoga teachers, santosha and cleanliness, and, not only what we put in our body's nourishment for food, but what we put in our mind. And is there a message from that you would like to share with us?
So the book Feed Your Head, a nonsensical, sensical life story is a nonsensical, sensical life story. And it's about a little girl who, and it doesn't matter if you're a little girl or a little boy, how you communicate with yourself is everything. And I made it like that for a reason. It is a rewritten fairy tale, and it's all about what you feed your head, and then who you communicate with, like, and how you communicate with, and those who you surround yourself with, they're impactful. Like everyone, if you can get there and can see that most people are trying to help you. Like, don't get me wrong, there are those people that are, whatever, however you want to look at them, but most people are trying to help you. If it's in a teacher, if you're willing to be a student, most people are trying to help you in some capacity. And I do it all the time. I became a makeup artist wanting to help young people because I didn't have any self-esteem. I had none growing up. And so most people are always trying to help you. And so the whole message of that book is that we have this ability to connect in this magical state within our minds and within our souls at all times. And so it's, we are what we feed our head, right? Like, so if I am operating in negativity and sadness and in pain, then I will continue to operate in negativity and sadness and pain, no matter how much front I want to put on and smiles and all that stuff. But you can also operate and just come into acceptance and come into love and then operate from there to it. You are moving energy into motion. And I'm reminded of that every day with, my little puppy dog and with all these, different aspects of our lives. She's over here. I apologize. She is like asking me for love. So I'm going to give her love right now.
Oh, I love it.
But I was talking about love and she came out from under the table. So
she's like, I heard my
love.
favorite thing is love. Yes.
Yeah. So I hope that made sense, but
yeah, Katy, there's a part in your book that I love so much where, she finds the treats and she overindulges, somebody offers her and,
she starts tripping balls, you mean?
She starts tripping balls, right? Which I don't know about who's listening, but some of us have done this before, right? And sometimes we're going for that outside source and we are connected to our God source and we're in that perpetual state of evolution in our spiritual divine selves. And we continue to needing something more, right? And we tell us, I'm going to take another course, or I'm going to read another book, or I'm going to get another. And I am definitely manifestor 1-3, right? I'm always going back to school, always re-educating. And that particular scene in your book really spoke to me of when will I understand that I am enough? Mm-hmm. In my source of self, and that as people give their wisdom, I don't have to overindulge and become addicted to their source of wisdom, right. And I know for each person it speaks differently, but that to me was just such a profound and prolific breakthrough for me reading that.
Yeah, it's funny because we're spiritual practitioners and coaches and guides and saying that out loud when we're here to assist, like we're here to mentor really and guide people, right? Like yes. We're willing to be guides, to guide you back to yourself. But don't make me your guru. Like, don't make me your God source. I'm not that.
We're not here to heal you. It's right? SYS, save yourself, not SOS.
And
right?
I think that I know that we've had conversations where like, I'm a healer. I'm a healer. I'm a natural born person who assists in healing the world. However, I'm not here to heal you. Like, I don't have something that's different than you. Like so we're simply just guides. So, little Jax gets addicted to the garden snacks immediately because they make her feel better. And anyone's going to go for what makes you feel better. And the whole point of that whole book is that she keeps going back. It's polarizing. She keeps flipping back to the pain points. She keeps flipping. And how many times do you do that? You're having a great day. Things are going so well in your new relationship. And you're like, oh my God, I do it. I recently did it where I'm like, literally like, oh my God, like, but, and then I'm like, I can get myself to pain so easily, but why not stay in the positive? Why not stay in the good? Why not allow the allowance of allowing, right? Like, so, acceptance and allowance and release, like what you said, fuck off. We can do that with our thoughts too. Like, let's tell those thoughts, those uncanny thoughts to fuck right off, and this isn't something we learned in school. We didn't learn that.
We should, but we don't.
Trauma is something that we keep alive in our head and in our souls. And, we're humans. We make mistakes, right? Like, things happen. We choose to be in relationships that may not be serving us, but they fueled us. They did something for us at that time. Right. And so, it goes back to, we're always doing our best, and we always have a minute to reset. And so that is the point. There's a mystery cat in the book, and the mystery cat sings her a song, Little Jax, and Bo and Mercury also. I'm like, I love music, and so there's all these like, all the characters are inspired by all these different things, like different musical inspirations, right? David Bowie was like a God source for me. So like Bowie and Mercury, you know, Freddie Mercury, they're inspirations for me in the book of like, because I listened to them because I couldn't go to God or to, you know, to the J word or anything, like, you know, I couldn't go to Jesus Christ. Like I didn't go there to get to God, you know, like I went to music and was like, this is how and moving meditations, and that was how I got to God. And so of course I put them naturally in my book. And they're like these characters that like I never met David Bowie. I never met Freddie Mercury. And I never met Elton John. However, like they're inspired in my book of like these people that are there, like to help you. They're guides, like, you know, along the way, and you go to them and listen to their music and memorize it and feel better. Right. So we have access at all times to feel better in some capacity.
Yes,
right.
That's
like
what we're talking about.
So, and
So
you know,
beautiful.
don't make yourself wrong when you jump off the deep end and you do something stupid. Right.
Yeah,
Like,
and
or when you
forgive
allow
yourself for what
someone.
you didn't know in the moment, right? Because that's the experience that shapes us to know. It's that law of polarity where we started the conversation.
Yeah.
Wow, Katy, so much wisdom that you dropped. And yes, just for all of you listening, remember SYS, save yourself, you know, by saying that you know, as Katy said, you know, we're not saying don't do the programs. We're saying recognize that you are that person. You have a choice. And if anyone's out there telling you they're going to heal you or save you or fix you, just remember you can do that yourself. You find the guides, the mentors, the practitioners, the coaches that help you to, just as Katy shared today, remember, right? Remember that you are that source within. Yes, remember, coming back together. So beautiful. Katy Ramirez, right? She is breaking records and amazing masses, as literally she is changing the world. It is such an honor to have shared this conversation, which we share so many conversations together, but to share this conversation around remembering God is in the room, for God is within you, with the rest of the world on our Radical Recovery of Self podcast. Thank you so much, Katy. I hope that you all enjoyed listening. Leave a comment, leave a review, follow Katy. Katy, your Instagram handle that you would like them to follow is?
At Katy Ramirez Artistry.
Perfect. And I will put it in the subcontext of the YouTube video as well as when I announce this on my social media. Thank you so much, Katy. Love you beyond all measure. Thank you for being such a fierce source of wisdom and truth.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.